Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready. And we're going to start with some sad news first to get it out of the way, as yesterday Oklahoma voters were set to decide on a cannabis legalization ballot measure. And while it was not a victory for the plant, unfortunately, as some of us were anticipating, and I was certainly wrong thinking that it would win by a landslide, here's a bit of context as how this came to be. As advocates tried to put the reform on the November 2022 ballot, no doubt this would have seen a much bigger turnout and could have led to different results. We don't know though, but delays in signature verification by officials and the state Supreme Court subsequent decision in litigation, because propagandists were trying to do this exact thing, get it off the November 2022 ballot, meant that it missed the window to qualify for that cycle. And so in October, Governor Kevin Stitt called a special election for the measure, which happened yesterday, and sadly 61% said no to adult use cannabis in Oklahoma, which is an unfortunate setback that really just delays the inevitable. But it's worth noting that Oklahoma has a very abundant medical cannabis program, and from my understanding, they have a lot of legal outlets properly supplying the legal medical cannabis as they should be doing, and providing access to opportunity to anyone that's wanted to get into the industry in the past. And so while adult use is a no and it would have been great, apparently if you have a pulse, you can get a medical card in Oklahoma, from my understanding. And so it's not like it's hard to get cannabis, and from a very red state that, you know, might still believe a lot of the propaganda, this is sort of the results we see. So not ideal. Full link below if you wanted to read a bit more, but another story from the New York Times on that same thing, just to highlight, with a cannabis shop on every corner already from their laxed medical approach, Oklahoma rejects full legalization. And so unfortunate, but the state has embraced medical cannabis with some 400 dispensaries in Oklahoma City alone, but voters decided against going further. And so again, I'm sure they have their own reasons. I'm not on the ground in Oklahoma, and so as much as I try to paint as accurate of a picture as I can with news articles and whatever I can find on Twitter, unfortunately, I am going to be wrong. So I do apologize for that, and while I did think this might have been a shoo-in, good news is we are seeing progress out of other states in the meantime. So thanks, Tom, for sharing this just now. As of yesterday, the Hawaii Senate passed a bill to legalize cannabis, and so a lot more detail in here, especially about psychedelics too, if you wanted to read. But the last wording in this article, the various bills will next head to the opposite chamber for consideration. So not law yet, but we'll keep you updated as that moves through. While Marijuana Policy Project shares there's more exciting news, the Delaware House of Reps has approved a bill that would legalize possession of up to 1 ounce of cannabis for adults. So great to see possession legalized. So more on this if you wanted to read below, but again, not law yet, still making its way through, and we'll update you. But with that, also just wanted to share this one from Tom Mangle, a sad story. The Department of Justice is now appealing a federal judge's ruling that struck down the ban on possessing guns for cannabis consumers. You cannot make this shit up. But sadly, this is the sort of shit we've come to expect out of the Biden administration, as over time they've proven to be nothing but a massive group of incompetent, lying diversity hires. And it's just really sad to see the DOJ used as a weapon against Americans in many ways throughout the last few years. Not only, you know, parents getting angry at what's being taught in schools, but at the same time seeing medical cannabis users having their Second Amendment rights infringed upon by the U.S. government. It's like the DOJ likes to infringe upon people's Second Amendment rights. It makes no sense. Very anti-American, sadly. So back to the cannabis news from New Cannabis Ventures. January cannabis sales slip, as we expect after December, but keep in mind, we look out for the trend of three big spikes throughout the year in March and April as people buy more for the 420 holiday and spring rolls around so the weather gets better. Then we see peak summer in July, and then we see December for the holidays as well. And so cannabis sales decreased 7% sequentially in January after increasing 5.3% in December, according to cannabis data analytics from BDSA. And so not going to go through this whole thing, but I'll let you pause to read if you want to see what's happening in each market. So Eastern markets, BDSA provides coverage for Florida, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. In January, year-over-year growth ranged from negative 13.7% in Maryland, medical-only market, to 36.8% in Michigan. Note that Florida, Maryland, and Pennsylvania are still medical-only markets, though Maryland is introducing adult use soon, hopefully by July 1st of 2023. And so here's Florida, if you wanted to pause to read a little bit more on them. Then we've got Illinois, if you want to pause to read. Maryland, medical only, pause to read. We've got Massachusetts as well, pause to read. Michigan, pause to read. And then Pennsylvania, last of the Eastern markets, you can pause to read. Medical only, but also working on potential legislation for 2023. But we've heard that before, and they haven't pulled through before in the past. So we keep waiting. But BDSA provides coverage for Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, and Oregon in the Western markets. In January, Western markets more mature, suffering a bit more than the Eastern markets. And again, if SAFE would pass, if the the handcuffs that force these operators to operate with both hands tied behind their backs were released, man, this industry could thrive and all the Americans involved in it could be celebrating. But until then, in January, year-over-year growth ranged from negative 21.1% in Nevada to 3.4% in Arizona compared to a year ago. And so this covers Arizona. You can pause to read. And this is California. Pause to read. For Colorado, most mature market in the country. Pause to read. If only we get some of those stimulus checks back. But no, we don't want any more inflation. That's not the answer, printing more money. Nevada, you can pause to read, sadly. But good to see Nevada actually keep up with what we saw last month. It's certainly an improvement from the last 18 months of downward trajectory that we've been seeing. So love to see that out in Nevada at least. And then lastly, Oregon, you can pause to read as well. And so, hey, we can see that Americans are still voting with their dollars for legal cannabis. And that's all we can really ask for while we wait for Congress to do their jobs and work for the American people and keep some of their campaign promises. And so with that, Trulieve reports fourth quarter and record full year 2022 results exceeding $1.2 billion in revenue. And so highlights here if you wanted to pause to read. Now, it's safe to say that if Trulieve did not buy Harvest, they would be a much more attractive company dominating in Florida, way more profitable, much higher gross profit margins. Sad thing is that they did buy Harvest, so they're still integrating. Not ideal to see what has happened to Trulieve because of that, but I do still have faith in this company in the long run, especially with Florida, legalizing for adult use hopefully sooner than later, but by 2024, hopefully the latest. So in the meantime, we've got their Q4 2022 financial and operational highlights. And so I invite you to pause to read if you're interested to learn more about what Trulieve is doing, but do not take this as investment advice. If you did want to invest in any of these companies, try to go to CDAR and look through their 10K filings and actually read through everything that they put out, because while this is easier and while they ought to relay as much factual information as possible, they can also omit things that they don't have to put in here that you would find otherwise. So just wanted to relay that as a disclaimer, as we learn over the years as we become better investors through experience. But then with that as well, 2022 full year financial and operational highlights, more on their full year here if you wanted to read through that. Pause to read. Recent developments here if you wanted to pause to read what they've been doing since the start of the new year. Management commentary down here. Pause to read if you're interested. And then last bit, financial highlights. And as well, you can grab the link below, but just wanted to share the snippet so that you didn't have to go find it yourself. And so with that, Curaleaf is set to report their fourth quarter and fiscal year-end 2022 financial and operational results before market open on March 28th, 2023. So Curaleaf will be reporting closer to the end of the month. So far, we've already seen Green Thumb report. We've seen Trulieve today, and I believe Air Wellness reports tomorrow, while other MSOs will be reporting later on in the month based on what they've announced previously in past videos. And so hopefully Curaleaf can knock this one out of the park, and we'll see some of the other MSOs playing catch up with them. But you're going to have to wait until the end of the month, unfortunately, now to see. And I imagine they want this to line up with maybe some Germany news. That would be awesome, but I'm speculating. Take that with a grain of salt. But with that, just wanted to share this Curaleaf release from New Frontier Data. Now, take this with a grain of salt as well, because while we've seen many of these in the past, a few years ago, the projections were $100 billion, assuming that Congress would do their job and pass SAFE and allow everyone to get an opportunity in this industry, as opposed to discriminating against it still and, choking everyone out of the opportunity. But did you know that 40% of American adults live in states with adult use sales? And of course, that is changing, and the number is going to continue to go up over time. And so the recent data from New Frontier Data showcases that the current and future impact cannabis has in the U.S. Data company projects the industry will hit $71 billion in legal sales by the end of the decade, I imagine, if all goes according to plan. And so with that, I wanted to share this one from Jesse Redmond, who's another cannabis investor that has been sharing news in the space, and I found him a valuable resource, so wanted to share, as he has released his own, I believe, weekly cannabis highlights. And so if you're interested, in this week's edition of the highlights, we cover the top 10 MSOs performance, Green Thumb and MariMed earnings, the Cresco Labs and Columbia Care merger concerns, Virginia adult use delays, and why Glasshouse is adding capacity. A preview is below. To read the full report, click here. And so I can share the picture, and I will put the report in the description if you wanted to read through it. But thank you, Jesse, for sharing this, as he's recently become, I think, the cannabis investor at least the cannabis researcher for Water Tower Research. I should send the guy an email and see if I can get it in somehow. I don't think I deserve to get there yet at all. I'll keep doing what I do because I have fun with this. But regardless, back to some state news. Tom Angelos sharing the Arizona Senate approved a bill to make medical cannabis registrations free for military veterans and to add new qualifying conditions to the program. Love to see this, Arizona. Something for the military veterans in your state that should have been should have been done or happened a long time ago, and adding new qualifying conditions will make it easier for them to get access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative. Love to see it. Well, we got some news out of New York, again, laughable, but at least this one is more true and accurate. As Marijuana Moment reports, most New Yorkers say cannabis is safer than alcohol, which is true, and they want local dispensaries, although what's funny is that a lot of the municipalities voted against bringing the dispensaries, and so in hindsight, yeah, they probably want that, especially because it does increase the real estate value, but this was from a survey in the state, and so it found some interesting data. We'll put the link below if you wanted to read through it. The data will help the department know where to best target our effort. Well, this may be true, and it's good to hear that New Yorkers want more access to legal cannabis points. The sad fact is the Office of Cannabis Management doesn't give a shit, because they resent humanity, and for that reason, they've chose to only open 3 legal dispensaries while they leave many social equity entrepreneurs out to hang dry. While 1,500 illegal dispensaries are running rampant in the state. Again, you cannot make this shit up. While this is nice to hear, when you have crazy people, working in the government that put what the state believes before the American people, then sadly, this is what you're going to get out of New York. But on top of that, a small change that could be coming to New York based on a bill that has been introduced, not passed or anything like that yet. But apparently this new bill by Cooney, thank you Murda Capital Holdings for sharing this one, would nuke the potency tax in New York. And so at least that's less tax having to be paid by the operators already struggling in this joke of a state. It's a start. And only 2.5 pages. It's simple, but the real highlight is at the end. Read the justification, which says it all. So, of course, what they're doing right now isn't working, and let's make it easier for those who are jumping through the regulatory hoops as opposed to the illegal people operating and getting a slap on the wrist when they're caught, so they just continue to operate because the profits are worth a slap on the wrist. It's a joke. Come on, New York, get your head out of your asses. And so with that, more news, though. Marijuana Moment shares that the U.S. Library of Congress compares hemp rules in countries around the world in a new report. Good to see anyone in the U.S. looking at this because, of course, hemp is a viable resource and better to make it legal and usable for the many variety of uses that it has as opposed to keeping it illegal. Demand and production of hemp are growing worldwide and are forecast to show significant growth in the next decade. So if you wanted to read a bit more on that, you can grab the link below. We got some studies from High Times and analysis legal cannabis associated with less alcohol-related pedestrian fatalities. Take that, prohibitionists, an argument that they like to try and claim still holds water, but the data is proving that it doesn't. So we like to see that with the steady Western normalization of cannabis use over the years. It's no secret that many consumers use the drug as a substitute for alcohol. And so according to a new study published in the Journal of International Association of Traffic and Safety Sciences research, the adoption of legal cannabis laws on a state level is associated with reductions in the number of alcohol-related fatalities involving pedestrians. Love to hear it. Makes sense too, as just less people are out drinking because they can switch to a better alternative, and we just see less potential fatalities. Huge news. And so you can pause to read more. Otherwise, you can grab the full link below, but I'll make it easy for you and just bring it down, pause to read if you're interested, and reading through the rest of it. And then last bit, pause to read. Well, we got some more stories. This is an older one, but just sort of replacing new data that ought to be pushed out there in the mainstream so that people don't believe the old school propaganda and lies. As cannabis, can it replace opioids? Yes, we know it can. And so more on this one. Not going to go through this whole one, but you can grab the link below. Actually, I might as well just make it easy for you too if I can. Pause to read if you want to see what Leafly has to say. We certainly know we've been featuring all the studies that we can to highlight that cannabis can replace opioids, and that's why Big Pharma lobbies to delay the legalization of cannabis so that they don't get any of their market share taken away and get blindsided by that sort of thing. And how might cannabis replace opioids? I imagine many ways: pain, inflammation, anxiety, medication, things like that. Things that Big Pharma does not want to see a loss in their market share of, sadly, and that's why they lobby. And unfortunately, they don't lobby with much, but it's enough to keep Congress from doing their job. And so you can pause to read as well. And then last funny question to pose, there's a bit more, but are there risks of co-using cannabis and opioids? Yeah, the risk is that you're going to use less opioids. And again, Big Pharma's not going to like that too. Can CBD help with opioid dependence? Pause to read here a little bit more if you want. And then, can cannabis replace opioids? Obviously, it depends on the person, the context, the situation, but is it not fair to say at this point in time that the person should have access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative and be able to choose if they wish? I think so. So we ought to deschedule and give Americans that right back. And so with that, or give Americans first and then the rest of the world that right back. But then this one from Reason.com, again, just highlights what I've been saying for 2 years. I'm happy to be this small voice, and I hope to get bigger over time as, what I say comes to fruition. But studies link cannabis legalization to all sorts of positive public health outcomes. And so not going to read through them all, invite you to grab the link below, but I will try to make it easy for you. Although this is a long article, the good thing is we've got more and more data to back this up, that reform is actually good with more benefits as opposed to, what prohibitionists have feared all along. And so you can pause to read. But again, just happy that the words are ringing true over time and we're seeing more data tell us what we already know. and eventually that data is going to have to replace the prohibitionist fears, he'd like to think. And so just going to stop it there. Otherwise, you can grab the full link because it's a long article. I'm not going to go through it all. But even the scumbag himself, Prince Harry, says cannabis really helped him deal with trauma. And so this is likely the only time in my life I've ever agreed with Harry. And I mean, I could just say that as some guy that sees his caricature in the news. Obviously, I don't know the Harry guy himself, so I'm sort of saying this in jest. But if cannabis helped Harry, then it can help many other people, I would imagine. And so just wanted to share this more for a little bit of the humor aspect of it. Apparently, he did an interview with Dr. Gabor Mate. I did not watch it at all, but apparently he did say that cannabis helped him a lot. And I imagine, like, cannabis has helped me a lot when used as a tool in moderation and not abused. It can help many people when explored or when given access, as I say, for non-addictive medicinal alternative. And so before I forget, wanted to share this because, again, we are anticipating Germany to announce some news by the end of the month. And so wanted to share this interesting random tweet I found, but Nick Pateras, managing director for Materia Global, my level of anticipation of Germany's legally compliant legalization bill is higher than it was for Bill C-45 in Canada. And so just a reminder that some people are getting excited to see what Germany's going to be doing. And I just don't want to forget that this is sort of happening on the background. And if that, might be timed with Curaleaf and some other news that I'm also just going to share a clip that I found that was random but worth noting. Here, we'll just jump to this. Now, if this is true, this would be awesome. But this is another example of us hearing what we'd like to hear from someone in a position, that can tell us what we like to hear based on what we think they know. And again, if Weldon is wrong, then sadly it's just going to make him lose more credibility, and it's going to piss us off more. But thank you, Winnie A, for finding this. I will post the full YouTube video under this, but he says, I'm going to throw this out there because my jaw almost hit the floor when I heard this about a month ago, and 0 people are talking about it. I didn't even see this, but again, if true, great, and we'll see something at the end of the month. If not true, less credibility to Weldon. We're more pissed off. But again, does the solution have to come at some point? So listen to this.
How is that being solved for?
Yeah, so the HOPE Act, so right now the plan is for the Democrats, I believe, in the Senate to introduce SAFE plus HOPE plus GRAM. Everyone knows that the GRAM Act is, a bill that would give medical cannabis patients the right to possess a firearm. And the HOPE Act gives funding to states that need it for expungement. Like California, for instance, I don't think the HOPE Act, there's not a whole lot of money in there because a state like California, there's thousands and thousands of people that are still waiting for their records to be expunged. And so these states need the funding. And so the HOPE Act, gives them that funding. And so the HOPE Act's important. And I do believe we'll see this package introduced end of March in both the House and the Senate. And, it's extremely important.
So what do you think, folks? Pretty explosive news, if true, and I pray to God that his source is not bullshitting him this time around, but I do recall in the fall, Weldon said that SAFE was going to pass in the NDAA, and unfortunately it didn't. So lost a bit of credibility there. Thank you, Weldon, for continuing to try, because no doubt we know the benefits of when this finally happens and we remove the overhang. Many positive benefits will come out of this when people stop living in fear and realize that cannabis is not an evil thing. And, we research the medical benefits and see it in a new light. So we want that day to come sooner than later, obviously. I'm all in. And so all we can hope for is really this industry finally getting some of the recognition it deserves, despite, being in the dark for so long and operating with hands tied behind their backs. But just wanted to share that as I found it. I'm going to listen to the interview later today, as I had not listened to the full thing. But when I found this clip, I was like, holy shit, please, Weldon, be telling the truth. Lots riding on this, and all we can really do is wait till the end of the month. But that would line up with Germany news too. That could all be massive. We will wait and see. But lastly, New Cannabis Ventures just wanted to bring you to this resource if you're curious what MSOs are going to be releasing and what days of the month coming up. And so I don't believe all of them have announced. I think some of them have. At least Curaleaf is probably the last one to announce. But these are all the other MSOs. Cresco's coming later in the month, March 16th. Curaleaf, March 28th. I think 16th is also when Verano's going to be, but I guess it hasn't been updated. But I think what we're looking out for is Air Wellness tomorrow to see how some of those new states have helped that company that can certainly pay its debt, but it's getting close to the wire. And so that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I'll catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.